So, Faisal, how much trouble is Theresa May really in?
Well, she called a snap general election, standing in this spot about 2-3 months ago, expecting to win an absolutely thumping majority, like 100, maybe even 200, and she managed to lose the majority. It was a total disaster for her, but she finds herself almost a prisoner because she has to carry on, and so she has to make it work somehow. So she's done a deal with a smaller party that has provoked some controversy, even with her own party, this Northern Irish party, the DUP. But what she's done today is she's asked to reach out to some of the opposition parties for their help, because the challenge of Brexit in terms of legislation is absolutely extraordinary. One bill will take a year and a half, but there's a whole series of other things where we're seeking to replace EU law with British law. So it's just about the worst scenario for having a minority government you could imagine.
Are these opposition parties in any mood to help an embattled Prime Minister when they can smell blood in the water?
They certainly can smell blood, and if the shoe was on the other foot, I'm pretty sure we know what would happen, which was they'd turn the political leader on a barbecue every so often, just wait for that to saute a little bit and wait for it to roast. And the fact is, the Conservatives internally are standing by her out of no great other idea as to what to do, because in fact replacing her would necessitate really another general election, which they fear that they would lose.
Gee, this sounds very familiar. So the greatest defence she has internally in the Conservatives is that another change would just be too much destabilisation, couldn't it cost them government?
And this is an epic time in British politics too, and it's not just her party, but it's her party that's under the spotlight. It's in government at the moment. You cannot necessarily come up with a coherent form of Brexit that appeases both the hardcore Eurosceptic Brexiteers that have caused so much trouble for the Conservative Party over decades and the more Remain Europhiles. It's difficult to see where that goes, and any issue could crystallise a fundamental split, and we have it right now on the arcane issue of our nuclear safety treaty. You know, something that's never troubled politics in probably 50 years, and suddenly it becomes this issue of heartfelt rebellion. So you can see the trouble. Now, she's been really helped today by the likes of Malcolm Turnbull, her old university friend, coming out and in such an enthusiastic way helping map out a vision for an international and open Britain. That's really helpful. Donald Trump did something similar at the G20 summit. In substance, though, I don't know, my interpretation of your Prime Minister was that he was saying, OK, we love you, we're going to do this, it's great. We are going to do that deal with the EU as well.
That's right.
We are going to, you know...
We're playing both sides of the fence,
exactly,
don't forget about that.
Tinder dating, multiple operation going on from the Australians. And I also wonder how much demands there will be made for extra visas, because it was under, ironically, Theresa May's Home Office that some of the restrictions on young Australians coming to the UK, a standard feature of my youth, my university days. Many of my friends are from your country, and some of them can't find that they can't come back, or their kids or their cousins or their nephews and nieces can't do what they took for granted. Now, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. So finally on Brexit, I mean, Malcolm Turnbull is pretty optimistic about what it means for Britons, as much as it might help Australia with a free trade deal. But for Britons, he spoke about the great confidence you'd be able to stand as a nation. And is that the mood here right now? Are people here still as favourable towards Brexit as they were at the time of the vote?
I mean, I'd be pretty optimistic if I was Malcolm Turnbull and I was going to do a trade negotiation, and I'd literally lent Australian trade negotiators to the United Kingdom.
It's a good trick, that one, isn't
well,
it?
no, it's a good, you know, the Empire Strikes Back, one might say. But there we go. But I think there isn't any great change. It depends how you interpret the general election. There was a huge rise in the number of under-25s voting. The under-45s, under-50s, who voted against Brexit, voted against the Conservative Party. Now, some people say it was about other issues. I see that there was a rebellion, not necessarily just against Brexit, but the idea that the older generation will define the future of the younger generation. And since that, with a change in the way the polls work, you have seen some majorities for remaining in. I wouldn't put too much store in that, but the idea that there may be a change in the water is out there. Some of the reality is now emerging about how complex it will be. Few would expect that that would mean that Brexit won't happen, but certainly the formulation, the type of Brexit we get, Theresa May went quite hard, the clean break. I think that is up for grabs now, and the future. I mean, no one's predicting much in terms of politics these days, but yeah, I think that is the direction of travel right now. Though Theresa May is sticking by the plan. She says nothing has changed. She was rejected purely for domestic reasons. The whole country still wants precisely the plan that she outlined.